If all you want to do is get the best preaching on the internet, funnel it into your home, you and I both should sit down and watch Furtick, because he's incredible. Why am I doing it? And so that was what we wrestled with: is do we want to provide content to people that they will then call community, and yet it will be not community at all. It's a counterfeit of community. They're just consuming content, and consuming content is not church.
Hey guys, Frank here with Tithely, coming to you with another episode of Modern Church Leader. Super excited about today's chat. Even in the pre-show, got a bunch of things that we connected on. Excited to talk to Pastor Shawn. Pastor Shawn, how's it going today?
Doing good. It's great to be on the podcast, Frank, and love what you guys do at Tithely, and love what you do with this podcast as well.
Yeah. I mean, the podcast is not really focused on chatting with Tithely customers, but you happen to be one, which is kind of extra awesome from my perspective. But, you know, we talk with pastors and church leaders really from all over the world, kind of about what's going on at their church and their ministry and whatnot. So it's pumped to chat today.
Awesome. Me as well.
Why don't you, I love to just start out having you give us some insight into, how you got into ministry. I know you planted your church and you guys have been around for about 10 years, but a little bit about your journey would be awesome.
Yeah. So I've been in ministry, feels like my whole life, just about, because I started being a youth pastor or a youth director when I was 17, which I don't recommend. And I would never hire someone at 17 to be.
What is that? That's 17 is like freshman in college?
Yeah, exactly. And they actually hired me my summer of my high school graduation. So I just graduated. People were in my youth group that I went to high school with. So it was really odd, like really strange, but great learning environment. But I have been on church staff in some capacity since then. I'm 47, turning 48 fairly soon now. So for nearly 30 or over 30 years, been on ministry, but had a lot of different experiences, but really where I learned how to pastor people, where I learned what church meant to me and what I wanted church to look like for us when we planted was my 10 years at Seacoast Church under Pastor Greg Surratt, and got to serve there from 2001 until 2011, and had varying roles, many different roles there, and was able to serve Pastor Greg Surratt there at Seacoast in a multi-site church. Actually, one of the key churches that sort of invented multi-site church was Seacoast Church, and so got to be a part of that and see that and run hard with that team there. And then in 2011, my wife and I knew that God was calling us to plant a church. And as we kind of explored, we really thought he was calling us to plant a church in our hometown. And so we moved about 45 minutes away from Seacoast Church, but back to our hometown of Moncks Corner, South Carolina, which most of your listeners will not have heard of unless you know that it is also the birthplace of Pastor Stephen Furtick, who also went to the same high school I went to. And so if you've heard Moncks Corner and you're like, where have I heard Moncks Corner before? He talks about Moncks Corner a lot, and that's you're more likely to know about Moncks Corner from that than anything else in the world, honestly. So we're a little small town right outside of Charleston, South Carolina, so you probably know Charleston better. Coastal town. We love our oceans. We love our fishing, our hunting, all those things. And got to plant Freedom Church 10 years ago here in Moncks Corner, our hometown.
Yeah, and so you and your wife are both from there.
We are, yeah. So we were high school sweethearts. Got married when we were 20 and 21, but started dating when we were 17 and 16. So I've actually been dating my wife longer than I've been in ministry. Was already dating my wife when I went to that youth job. And so she was one of the youth that was in the youth group that I was now the youth pastor of, because she was still in high school when we were at that. So really weird, only in the South that can happen, but yeah, it happened.
So good. So I mean, I've not been to Moncks Corner, but I have been to Charleston a number of times, and a few surrounding. Yeah. Charleston is beautiful, man.
I tell most people, why don't you live here? But you're in San Diego, so can't really say that.
Yeah, it's tough, right? I mean, Charleston was beautiful. I still would pick San Diego because Charleston in the summer with the no-see-ums.
Yeah.
Is that what they're called again, right?
Mosquitoes and the humidity.
Oh my gosh.
And the CMs, as I like to call them, which are the mosquitoes, which are about this big. You're gonna
I,
get a good dose of all of that. So
I'm soft. I can't handle any of it. I'm staying out
yeah,
here.
you guys can actually go outside during the summer in San Diego, whereas we pretty much stay inside in August and September. So
Yeah,
that
that's
98
how.
degrees, 100% humidity is tough. It's tough stuff.
Yeah. Did you and you mentioned Stephen Furtick? Did you guys go to school together?
So he's a little bit behind me in high school,
Okay,
but we know each other from growing up in the Moncks Corner area and
got it.
have known each other for years and stay friends to this day. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And I know you played basketball, so I'm not sure if you got. Did he play basketball? Like, is there any sports connection? Was
No,
he a
no,
sports guy?
no, and he's a Clemson fan, so that makes it even worse. But
Oh, okay. Well, let's moving on.
we won't. Yeah, yeah,
So you planted the church 10 years ago.
yeah, yeah.
So you're a church planner, and I know that's a special type of person. I mean, what's it been like, the 10-year journey?
And I think you always are a church planner. I always hear people, they're like, yeah, I'm a church planner. And then they're like, when did plant your church? Oh, 35 years ago. And it's like, you're not really a church plant anymore. Like, I guess you are, but you're not. But I think
Yeah,
it's just like something in our DNA that we were
yeah,
always, once a church planner, always a church planner. And yeah, so
absolutely.
we planted 10 years ago with ARC, which was founded out of Seacoast Church. The ARC is the Association of Related Churches. And I tell everybody, if you're going to plant a church, talk to ARC, go through ARC,
Yeah,
because they just do an incredible job at planting churches. And so we got to plant a church in our hometown with a small core group, and really for our size city had some really good success early on, in a lot of the areas, and the areas that really matter, like seeing people's lives changed and baptisms and salvations and people connecting and discipleship type of environments. But of course, that was sort of funneled out of a large group of people joining us as well. So had
yeah,
a lot of attendance as well. And so, we've been able to build buildings over those 10 years that we worship in now. And we are not multi-site. Right now, by strategy, we like being a single site church, that we are, and have been able to see a lot. And then over these last 18 months to 2 years, of course, we've just learned so much more, and learning about what really matters, and how to do church differently, but yet the same. I think at first, right, in COVID, we were all like, everything changes. We're never,
yeah,
we don't, and then we kind of figured out like, no, everything didn't change, but some things were clarified, and some things we are glad that they changed, and then some things we're sad that they changed. And so we're kind of dealing with all that now too. But we've been blessed to have a really good 18 to 2 years time as a church. I think we had done a lot of the work in the racial kind of area before George Floyd, and before a lot of churches that had to do a lot of work there. We
hmm,
had just been blessed by God to have our story kind of intersect with some other people's stories, that we are a church that is blended racially a lot. And so we
yeah,
had done a lot of that work. And so that didn't do a lot of negative stuff for our church. It did a lot for our church, but it was more like we were able to jump into some positive spaces, be a positive voice, and really had some voices within our church that were able to echo some things that needed to be said were already being said. So we didn't see a lot of that. Um, by the grace of God, we did not have a lot of masking, no masking, vaccine, no vaccine stuff. We just didn't
yeah,
have it. We didn't talk about it a lot, and so we didn't invite it in, and we just didn't have a lot of that. And then our church really just came together, and just seemed to like, we just figured out who our core was. We figured out who the church was. So now we know going forward, like, we know who's with us. We whether they were joining online or not, because of great tools like Tithely, and I know that's not what we're here for, but it really did.
You can pitch it all day
I'm
long. Go for
talking,
it.
I'm talking to people at that time who are like, "Hey, how are y'all going to make it financially?" And I'm like, "We're fine. Like, we're doing great."
Right.
Wow, how are you collecting offerings? And we're like, well, we were already doing 68% online, I think, before COVID. So we had it in place. And so that really helped. And so people that were joining us online, and we're in South Carolina, so, much different from California, probably much different than a lot of people who are joining us. We were back into church pretty quickly. Like, we were not
Hmm.
out. a long time. I think
Yeah.
we started having services again live with significant portion of our people here in June of
Okay.
2020. So like,
Right.
April, May, we were out, March, kind of went out in March a little bit. Then
Right.
April, May were really the only 2 months that we weren't doing church, and had, 50% of our people show up, from day one almost. And then that just kind of grew some. But so we kind of got through that stuff, and just, I feel like it's been one of those years or 2 years or whatever where we just know.
Isn't it crazy that it's literally almost 2 years
Almost two. I keep
from,
wanting to say 18 months, even is
I,
even more.
I know I've said 18 months for so long, and I'm like, wait a minute. No, we're actually almost, we're hitting
Coming up.
2 years here pretty soon. It's crazy.
So those 2 years for us have been, I just think we know who we are. Like we just, we really got to, our staff really congealed. We know who we are. We know what we do well. Some freedom, that our church is called Freedom, but we found some freedom, because I would say I'm an 8 on the Enneagram. If anybody cares, I'm driven. I am. I'm a little old school in my like work ethic. So missing church just like wasn't an option. Like
Yeah.
hurricanes, bad weather, whatever. We were like, we're doing church. Like, I mean, that's just what we're doing. Like, we do church.
Right.
If people show up, they show up. And if you don't show up, you're weak. That was kind of my mentality before all of this happened. And God really used it, honestly, as a discipline, and a disciplining of me having to miss church, because I had to deal with sort of some idols of like, of the meeting. The
Mm,
meeting had become an idol in some ways. I was definitely worshiping God through it, but it was like a vehicle that had become a little bit of an idol for me, because I thought, if we don't meet, we can't make it. If we don't
right.
meet, we're not really worshiping. And
Yeah.
now I have some opinions on that, having done church at home with 4 kids, that I can give if we want to get into that. But like, I was very much in that, and that COVID season, it put that junk on the altar. Counting, counting. I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy. Like,
Yeah.
I like to look at the numbers. I serve sort of as CFO as well as senior leader of our church, and numbers speak to me. And yet we couldn't count anything
Hmm.
except for the money. That was the only thing we could count. And so,
Right.
and most of the churches in our flow and the ARC churches, that was staying steady. So like, the only number we could really count. So we're trying to figure out, like, if people are joining online, what does that mean? How many people? We can't figure any of that out. Any
Right.
number that
Right.
anybody's giving you about how many people are joining them online, they don't know. Like, they don't.
Yeah.
I mean, they
Oh,
know.
it's like Facebook views, YouTube views, Instagram.
Yeah.
Like,
So we just kind of came up with this algorithm to count it, and just count it the same way every week, so we could at least see this. But we don't know. Well, we don't know how many people are joining. And so all that stuff was put on the altar and had to die. And
hmm
so I came out of it as a pastor. And I think a lot of pastors are saying this. I came out of it going, I can't control any of that. And if we don't meet, we'll be all right. We're fine.
right.
Like, we're gonna be okay. So even to the fact, like, we're not gonna meet January 2nd as a church. We never meet the weekend after Christmas Eve. We do a huge Christmas Eve, lots of services, and we just never meet that Sunday after it. That always makes sense. But this year I was like, I don't want to go to church on January 2nd. Nobody's going to want to go to church on January 2nd. Let's just not do it. And I
Right.
only do that because of what COVID was able to kind of kill in me, of like thinking that was the church. And
Right.
it's a part of the church. It's a huge part of the church,
Yeah.
but it's not the church. It's not the
Yeah.
church. And so as I'm talking to pastors, I'm hearing a lot of that, of like, man, I didn't realize until that season how dependent I was on the emotional uh, adrenaline that I got from preaching 4 times, and giving it everything I've got for 4 services, and seeing
Right.
people and shaking hands, and like that. I determined if I had a good Sunday by the adrenaline surge that I had, and I learned how unhelpful adrenaline is to measure effectiveness. Number one is,
Hmm.
you fall off a cliff, you'll get a lot of adrenaline, right? Not
Yeah.
very effective, but a measure,
Fast.
yeah, real fast too. And then I also didn't realize how unhealthy all of that was to my body, because once I didn't do it for like a month, I was like, I feel so much better. Like I feel like a different man. And so some new rhythms in our lives and we're blessed to have been building a building when COVID hit. So we also could go to two services because we had the space now. But
Hmm.
I'm going to do everything in my power never to preach four times again on the weekend. And I've heard a lot of pastors saying that. Like I went to preaching once or I went to preaching twice, and I realized what it felt like to be a normal human again.
Yeah.
And I think I'll do that for the rest of my life. I don't think I'm gonna serve the idol of people who say they need to see me live to be able to have church. So we might go to
I mean,
four.
I've heard some churches, one of the things churches all learned, and whether they kept doing it or whatever is maybe a whole different conversation, but especially larger churches that have multiple services and those that are either multi-site or maybe they simulcast somehow,
Yeah.
where they'll do one live service and record it and play the recording for all the other slots.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I've got lots of friends doing that. You think you're seeing they're on a video all the other services because they just figured out it can happen and they like now. I'm my best my second time, so I don't know if I ever go to one. I like getting that second shot and going, ooh, I didn't like the way I said that. So if any of my church people are watching this, they know now. Come to the second service. It's always
First service
yeah.
declines in attendance
Yeah,
down to,
yeah, yeah. First
the
service.
early
Well, I
birds.
will say this though. I say some really, maybe right on the line of offensive things sometimes. The first service, and then I have people tell me, "Don't say that. Don't say it." So it's a crapshoot. Do you want to get like unfiltered, or do you want to get corrected? You get to pick.
Yeah, you pick. What, I mean, everything you kind of teed up, we could go a few different ways. I mean, there's kind of the health side of things, but also what are churches learning? And maybe we can jump into them both. Like, what other things did you guys learn over the last 2 years as a church? Like, what have you come out of this time going, oh, we're doing this better, or this is a better way to do this kind of ministry or this kind of outreach, or like super open-ended, whatever it is. But is there any of that where you go like, man, this really got better for us through this season?
Yeah, I mean, one thing we learned, and I learned, and this will be maybe somewhat controversial. I don't know. I don't want to be controversial, but maybe it will be. Is there are some churches who are uniquely called to online experiences,
Right, right,
online real ministry. I'm not talking about you can watch. We do a very good job of you can watch our service online. We
right.
even pray with people while they're on there. We do something like that. Now I'm talking about like legit. I live 100 or 1,000 miles away from this church, but I'm a part of that church. There are some unique individuals who I think are uniquely gifted, and their platform has been uniquely resourced and supplemented that they can do that. And what we learned is, I mean, we didn't hear anybody saying, I really enjoyed worshiping from my home. Really, really got a lot out of it. Was able to really connect with God in musical worship, for instance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That was the big. I'm a very musical worship centered person, and we're a musical worship centered church. We love demonstrative musical worship as a discipline, spiritual discipline for our church. And I did not connect with God the same way and at the same capacity and same intensity when it was me with my kids on my couch watching YouTube on my TV
Right.
as I do when I'm in the room. So there's something for me spiritual about gathering together, the church gathering together, that is really important. And I think we learned. I told our church, we're going to use online in every way we can. We're going to do online small groups. We're going to do online join it. But our goal is that people would go to a brick and mortar church in their area, or ours if they're close enough, and that they would be in community with other people
Yeah.
in mass, and learning and growing together and experiencing that emotion that I believe God created in us, of being together. And so that was unique for me because I never knew. Love what some of the churches that I'm friends with, their pastors are doing in the space, but I never could connect with like, would I watch church online? Like I just couldn't connect with that. And so I
Right.
was like, well, that's not our thing. Like that's not our thing. Um, Other people will do it. We'll just provide, if you're sick, you can watch this. If you're move away for a while and you're trying to find a church, you can watch this. And then during COVID, it had to be the only thing, right? And so I had to really wrestle with it. Like, do we want to go after this strategy? And I saw so many people like going after sort of wearing Saul's armor for like David, had to try and wear
Mm,
Saul's armor. And they're
yeah.
like, oh, we need to do what Elevation is doing. They do EFAM, and we're just going to not, that's all we're going to do. And I'm like, man, the problem with EFAM without Furtick is it ain't the same without Furtick, because he's
Yeah.
one of the most gifted pastors and preachers in this country, in this world.
Yeah.
I mean, like I'm a friend of his, but I can say, if all you want to do is get the best preaching on the internet, funnel it into your home for content, you and I both should sit down and watch Furtick.
Yeah. Right.
Because he's incredible. Why
Yeah.
why am I doing it if we can just if it's just about content?
Yeah.
And so that was what we wrestled with, is do we want to provide content to people that they will then call community, and yet it will be not community at all. It's a counterfeit of
Mm,
community. They're just consuming content, and consuming content is not church. And so we decided, like, we're going to give a place for people that cannot, for and there's still people for medical reasons that cannot go to brick and mortar church
right.
because of COVID. And I get that. So we have that. We have that for them. We connect them. They serve that way. We have people in our church who serve only online because their comorbidities would cause it to where if they got COVID, they would die. And so they don't come and meet in church yet. But yet we don't want people to call that their church. We don't want that to be their church for other reasons. And so that was something we learned. People watching may be going, blasphemy, that's not what we do. But for us, we
I
had
actually
to.
bet you there's more churches that would agree with that and would feel relief from like hearing another pastor say it out loud and
I
not
hate
like
church.
living.
When I had
Yeah.
to try to do it at home, I was like, and now I know it's unique for me. I'm having to watch myself preach, which is just a whole nother deal. But I was like, I'm not looking forward to it. Now,
Yeah.
I looked forward to my time with God. So, because I know I hear people saying out loud, like, well, your time with God shouldn't it be about, but I know I had great time with God where I would worship and would sing and praise on private worship. But with my family all around, all of a sudden it was super weird to ask my 12-year-old son, hey, why don't you raise your hands like you do at church, sitting beside me with your pajamas on,
Right.
and it just was weird. And so
Yeah, yeah.
I
The
hope our
energy,
culture,
everything is different, right? It turns very consumeristic in a
yeah,
lot of ways.
it's content.
Yeah,
And I love giving people content. I watch content every week. I'm all about content. This is content, right?
yep,
Great content. You need content in your life, but content is not church. Content is not community. And so if you move past that, then you've got to ask some really hard questions, which is, how are we connecting people? And if we are not equipped, resourced to connect people in Kansas with
right,
our church the way that Elevation is resourced and uniquely gifted to connect people in Kansas with their church.
right.
They can do it. We can't. But if all I need to be is another lifechurch.tv or another Elevation, then why do I exist anyway? So we had to really ask, what does Freedom Church need to be for our people at such a time as this? And it caused us to wrestle with that whole online thing. It caused us to wrestle with like, what does discipleship really mean? What does it look like? Because during that season, there were so many people that we couldn't hear from. And we're so used to like at least getting a check-in every now and then. And
Mhm.
like we were getting nothing back. And then that made us go within, what is our real connection with them? Like, what if we don't have a small group leader who can reach out to them and say, how are you making it? What are you doing? How can I pray for you? Like, how are we discipling them besides the weekend? Like, how are we? And so we had to ask a lot of questions about how can we do a better job at that? How can we get people more connected? Um, and um, and then, it also made, so this is a little different maybe than what people would think we went. we kind of accepted the fact that no matter how hard we try to get people in those discipling communities, which is the goal,
Mm-hmm.
there's a certain segment of our population that is not going to, and they're going, and hopefully we move people from one place to the other. But there's
Right.
always, in a church like ours, there's always going to be 30% of our church. It's like, hey, I come on Sunday twice a month. That's what I'm doing. What we found during COVID was those people were not maybe as connected as we thought they were.
Mm.
And so I'm asking in my preaching and our worship on the weekend, how can we give them a better connection? How can we connect with them more with God? Um, if all we get to do is disciple them on the 2 times they come a Sunday. Now, I'll argue on behalf of those saying they should come more. Absolutely. I'll argue on behalf of those saying they should be in a small group. But if they're not going to, like if
Right.
they're not going to, what do we need to do better on the weekend? And so our weekend had always been kind of this assumption of we're preaching to everybody, but we're going for those who aren't saved, and we want to be a draw for them, but we expect you to get in a small group. Like that's an expectation.
Mm-hmm.
I think now I'm preaching in a way that I'm like, I hope you'll get in a small group. I kind of expect that you won't real quickly. And I'm going to accept that as a reality. So I have a little bit more work to do on the weekend than I used to think I had to.
Yeah.
And so that changes my preaching a little bit. Like I can't, and I got to do both, which is even harder. I got to know there's a huge crowd that's brand new. There's a big crowd that is going to small groups, and then somewhere in the middle, I got to preach to all of them.
Right.
So that was a change for us, Frank. Like just going, how do we get around that, and what does that mean? And then I think the biggest surprise, if I had to kind of say, man, this has been a surprise of these 2 years, were the people that were unbelievable dream team members
Mm.
who have not come back on the dream team.
And dream
Our
team is what? Just
dream team
for,
is
yeah.
like volunteers. Sorry, yeah. So we call our dream team, kind of ARC language. We call our volunteers our dream team,
Yeah.
and and I'm hearing this across the country. Like I'm hearing this in droves. The dream team hasn't come back as quickly as the people have,
Mm.
and so finding kids workers, finding greeters, finding small group leaders, all that stuff, youth workers, it just, and the people that were just so all in that now are coming back, but are like, yeah, I don't want to serve anymore. It's one of there are moments that every lead pastor will understand this, what I'm getting ready to say out there. There are moments as a lead pastor throughout your career, and mine's been 10 years so far, and I've had several of these where you go, is it doing any good at all? Like, is what we're doing, does it even matter?
Right.
And I would say that the dream team, not those high capacity, incredibly discipled, Jesus loving people that have now gone, I kind of like getting out of the boat earlier. It has surprised me and has been one of those moments where you're kind of like, excuse me, man, what we need to really check what we're doing, because is it making a difference? That's probably been the most disappointing thing of the whole
Why
2 years.
do you think that is? That's a question out of like, you kind of hit a point that I've seen too, like even in my own church and where I'm really connected, and and in talking to other pastors and church leaders, right? Like I've heard that thing. Like, why do you think there's a decline? And I don't know if this is a generalization,
Yeah.
because I haven't talked
I
to
don't,
every church, but
I mean, I've talked to a lot of pastors, and I don't think it's a generalization. I think there's some weird things going on in our country right now, and by weird, I don't even mean, let's say, transformational, and transitional things going on. Not even weird, because there's always weird things, right?
yeah.
But I'm talking about. I don't think this is a blip on the screen that people are going to choose to work less hours at jobs they really love and demand more money to do it. Like, I don't think it's just like a moment. I think the economy and the workforce is going to look very different going forward. Like I think churches are going to find a very difficult time hiring in the foreseeable future,
Mm-hmm.
like as easily as we used to. And there's no longer. I've never been a fan of this anyway, but paying less than the marketplace. I don't believe it exists anymore,
Right.
because but I do believe people. So that's changing, which is giving people more disposable income, but they're demanding less time on the job, or at least flexibility on the job.
Right.
I'm going to work from home, or I'm going to work from my RV while we travel, which has opened up the opportunity for more travel, for more seeing things and seeing people and camping and all of the outdoors things that a lot of
Right.
times, certain parts of the country, Denver, Colorado, those places deal with it all the time, but we
Yeah,
don't always have to
totally.
deal with it. So I think that's part of it. I think that part of it is people going, I mean, I'm just not going to serve because I want to do more recreational things, travel a little bit more. I don't want to be tied down to being a leader in this area because that means I can't hardly ever miss. And so I think there's some of that. I think bigger than even that, and is laziness is a habit, and a big habit can be built over the course of 3, 4, 6, 8, 12 months, wherever you happen to be in the country,
Yeah.
of people not doing something. And it just, I mean, giving most of your Sunday to a local church is not the easier choice to make.
Right.
It's the harder choice to make. And so when
Yeah.
you've made the easier choice over and over and over again, you kind of go, I mean, we were doing too much. We weren't doing. Now, I believe what's going to happen is, and I believe we're starting to even see this happen, is people are going to find that no matter how flexible their jobs are, no matter how much they found that job that pays better for, less hours to do what they want to do, and no matter how much they camp and hike and do all the things, there's still an eternal impact that you want to make with your life, and you don't make it in any of those other things. And so they're going to come back and go, I really want to make an eternal impact. I want to make something. I want to do something that's bigger than me. I want to do something that's bigger than me. Yeah, I'm making a lot more money now, more per hour or whatever, but I want to do something that's bigger than me. I have flexibility. I could go see another great national monument, but I really want to make a bigger impact. So I think we're going to see it correct itself, even though that other stuff isn't going to change.
Right.
And then I do think there's still some fear of serving puts me in front of more people, closer to more people,
Mm.
in a unique ways than just showing up to church does. And so I do think there is a small percentage of people that are like, hey, I'll attend church, but I can sit where I want to sit, by who I want to sit to, and I can get out quickly, and I'm not
Right.
around as many people, so maybe I'm not as likely to catch a virus that way.
Right.
So I think there's some of that too, no
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting time, right? In a lot of ways. I say it, I feel like on all these episodes, like being a pastor, being a lead pastor, being a church leader of any sort. I mean, it's probably harder now than it has been. Not that it's not difficult work, but the
Yeah.
last 2 years has made your guys' jobs like incredibly challenging.
And
So
you're hearing this all over the marketplace. Everybody who's listening to this is hearing it. Hard to hire people, hard to find people to hire. But it's the case in churches too. In fact, I talked recently with Todd Rose, one of my buddies who runs a church staffing company called Church Chemistry, and he said like hiring people now is 6 to 8 months delayed what it used to be. So if you're
wow.
looking for a youth pastor, probably could have found one in a national search in 3 months. Now it's going to be a year. Now it's going to be 18 months to find that worship person. Because
So
so it's the same
crazy.
thing in the church space that it is in the market space. And part of that is because we had a lot of people leave the ministry over the last 2 years.
Right.
I mean, I don't think we're talking about it yet enough, how it's going to impact the church for the next decade. A lot of pastors said, man, I got up and said, Black Lives Matter, and then I got torched, and I
Right.
don't understand it, and I don't want to deal with it, and I'd rather work at Home Depot.
Right.
They're paying $18 an hour now, so go to Home Depot and get some insurance and I don't have to worry, and nobody's going to yell at me, and nobody's going to threaten to fire me. And then a lot of churches, and by the grace of God, we didn't have this, but a lot of people I talked to, masking, no masking, vaccine, they quit. So we had a ton of people leave ministry. I think
Yeah.
we're going to see that as the combination of that and boomers leaving the workforce in ministry happens. We're going to have to see our staff do um, a lot more with a lot less. So we're going to have less staff to do more, and we're going to have to fire. We have to hire less people, and we're going to have to pay them more. So because I mean, 6% inflation right now, that's the latest COLA from the government is 6%. So if you're looking at raises for your staff right now, take that into mind. 6% is the cost of living increase that they're giving to Social Security Administration now. And so when you see that, you have to pay more, which means tithing is not going to catch up as quickly. So you're going to be able to hire less because you're paying more. And then even when we have 2 open positions right now that we can't hire for. And so you have these positions that you're trying to hire for and you can't hire for them. And so it's going to be a unique time. And the churches that decide, so right now there are churches going, man, I wish we had been with Tithely in 2018 so we could have been ready for 2020. And they'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah.
I think right now churches better get used to, we need twice as many dream team members to do what we used to think one could do, because they're not going to serve as often as they used to would be willing to serve. And we need, on top of that, we need 30% more dream team members, because we're not going to be able to hire as many people as we used to were able to help hire. And so we got to equip the people to ministry even more than we used to could, which that jazzes me. That's what we're here to do anyway.
Right.
I wish we could get rid of all paid staff in the end. I mean, I wish none of us had to do it, that we were like, man, the church just operates like it operates and we don't have to pay people to do stuff. So that'd be incredible. I don't think we'll see that in my lifetime, but that would be an incredible place to be, right?
Yeah.
So getting people to do what God has uniquely called them to do is my job. So I'm excited by it. I think it's great. Tell me we got to have more dream team members, and that excites the daylights out of me. So
how do you motivate volunteers? Let's kind of we'll wrap on this topic, because I feel like we could keep talking on all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But in this environment, right, with kind of all the context that we've been talking about, like motivating volunteers to come back to kids ministry, to be a greeter, to be a counter, to serve as a small group leader.
Yeah.
It's hard, and it's all taking a toll on everybody. What do church leaders need to do? How do you inspire people to come back and give their heart in that way?
So desperation causes us to make really, really bad choices. And what we can do when we're desperate is we can start to fill spots instead of actually looking for what people are uniquely gifted to do.
Yeah.
And so we just need kids people. So if you're breathing, man, come do kids. Well, then they get no real appreciation from it, no real satisfaction from it. Mm-hmm. And then they believe that is what, it's about, is that it's about really. Here's a great question. How do you motivate dream team or volunteer people? Ask yourself this question. Do I care more about it being important to them and how important it is? Is it more about them, or is it more about me? And most of the time when we're recruiting is to meet our needs. We need someone to do this. We need somebody to be in this spot, in this space, whatever, because it makes my life better. Right. So what if we actually said, what do they need? And then that would be a little bit harder, because we'd have to go, well, where would you be best to serve? And if we said, where would you be best to serve? We even would ask the question, and this one's hard, how often would it be best for you to serve? What is that? What does that look like for you? Rather than, oh gosh, we got you. Can you serve every day and every week? And man, another team needs you. And
right.
So what happens is people aren't motivated. The greatest motivation in the world is doing what God has called you to do.
Yeah.
When you're doing what God has called you to do, you don't need a lot of other motivation. And so if we can get people in that position where they are being fed by the fact that they're doing what God has asked them to do, and only what God has asked them to do, then they're going to show up anyway. And then, of course, practical things. We can appreciate them. When's the last time, when I don't preach, I love to go around and tell people thank you and just say, thank you. Thank you. 2 things people do. People show up to your church. If you're a pastor, they show up to your church with, a lot of them at least do, show up with and leave with less money than they had when they came, voluntarily, generously give to your church so that you can do the things that you do as a church.
Right.
And we know it's obeying God, and we know God called us to do it. But at the practical sense of it, they, by no force, by no one making them, not taxation, not, government making them do it or anything. They just come in and go, hey, here's our money. You can have it. Do with it what you want, basically. And that's amazing. And we should thank them so often for that. Like every time someone gives, they should be thanked. When they cross thresholds, they should be thanked. When they increase their giving year over year, they should be thanked, because yes, they're obeying God, but they're not obeying you. So yeah, don't make it so like, I don't have to tell them thank you because they're obeying God. They're not obeying you, they're obeying God. So thank them for being generous so that you can do your job.
Right.
And then secondarily, we don't thank the people that serve in our churches enough. It's amazing what a handwritten card will do to say, you serve in this way, and because you serve in this way, I saw this life change happen, and boy, isn't that cool. It's amazing what that will do. And phone calls. Everybody under 30, phone calls. Not text messages.
I don't know. It might be under 40 nowadays. I'm not sure.
Phone calls. Call people and tell them, thank you so much for serving on my team. Thank you for serving this weekend. Will you serve? I love Planning Center. Planning Center guys, if you're watching, don't get upset. Planning Center is not how you invite people to serve on your worship team.
Yeah.
Call them, ask them, thank them. Let them click the node in Planning Center. Let them do the invite. If that's the only way you're inviting people to come and serve on your worship team, and they haven't heard from you besides when they show up, and you thank them for being there to play bass, well, of course you thank them then. They playing bass for you. They're serving you. Have you called them, asked them, thanked them recently? So, I mean, it's just human nature. People say, how do you recruit people? Have something that's worth coming and doing.
Yeah.
How do you sell something? You sell a product that's worth buying. How do you keep a customer? You thank them. I mean, it's the two most basic things in the world, and most churches do it terribly.
Yeah.
Terribly. Recruiting and thanking.
Yeah.
Give them something worth chasing their life out, giving their life to, and then thank them for doing it. Because they didn't do it for. Because if you recruited them properly, you let them know they're doing it for God, not for you.
Yeah.
So when you thank them, you're thanking them that you get to be a part of watching them do it, because they're doing it for God, not for you. So that sets a tone too. They're not serving me when they serve on the Dream Team. You're serving God. You're not serving Freedom Church. You're serving God. So I think all those things work well together.
Man,
so
we could
I'm
keep
not
going,
sure
right?
any answer, so I know we're probably over time or whatever.
Oh no, there's no real time, but I mean, we could keep talking about all kinds of stuff, man. I love like throwing out a question, picking your brain for a minute, and then letting you go, because you got tons of wisdom in the 10 years you've been building that church. Just have learned a lot and learned some great lessons through COVID in the last 2 years. So it's cool kind of hearing your story. So, but man, we're gonna call it for today, just because I want to be respectful of your time too.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Frank.
Pastor
Thanks
Shawn,
for having me on. Really love it. Love that we get to be a part of this. And any way Freedom Church can help any church that's listening. We love helping churches. We love helping church planners. We love helping pastors. Just let us know. We're an open book to help you.
Where can folks go to find out more about you guys? I know you've written a few books too, so I'd love to kind of give a shout out to some of those books. None
of which are available on Amazon anymore, because they like ran out, and so I've written some books, but you can't get them. If you happen to, you can find one used probably, so those are great. But so go into your local used bookstore, and hopefully someone bought it in your area. But they can find us at Freedom Church MC or SC MC at Freedom Church MC on all the socials.
Okay.
And at Pastor Shawn Wood on Instagram for me. DM me if you want to connect and you're a lead pastor. I'd love to. You can connect with our staff, DM on Instagram or whatever. And then old-fashioned, if you're real old-fashioned, www.freedomchurch.sc. If you don't have the gram, is our website.
Love it. Well, Pastor Shawn, this has been great, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate y'all as well. Thank you for what Tithely does, and we'll connect later.
Yes, sir. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next week on another episode of Modern Church Leader. Bye-bye.